So I'd actually arrived the day before the conference started, but I was having a bit of a WhatsApp misunderstanding with someone back in London, which kind of threw me. And it turned into a bit of a WhatsApp argument, and I've been trying to... This isn't a person in the Gurdjieff work either, just to make sure this is clear. And this person who'd thrown me a bit, I was trying to contact to get in touch with, and she was not answering my calls. And I know this sounds like I'm bitchy, but I found that affected me that night and the next morning before the conference started proper. I'm not very good with tiptoeing around people who, well, let's say have mental health issues. And I was trying to, what I thought was making amends, and they'd taken it personally and left me a lovely essay on WhatsApp. But you know, when you read something and then you can't get rid of it, and this is something that I know that in the Gurdjieff work we should be able to let go of, become aware of why that affected me. But I know the words kept coming up in my mind, and I was pondering on it, probably taking myself off to a dark place about it. And I should have should have been considering why this was affecting me. In a way, it gave me good Gurdjieff work, a good Gurdjieff work opportunity. You know, why was I feeling this way? Why was I affected by this incident that I'd had on the WhatsApp? And why did I let it disturb me? So I headed off to the conference, and the energy in the conference was at first all over the place. I was thinking, is this me? Am I having an all over the place energy? But I've realised now, and it took me a while to figure out, of course, everyone's energy was all over the place. It was the first start of a few days we were all going to spend together. You know, there was old faces, new faces, and we were all making small talk as we stood around waiting for the conference to actually start. So I think that's also why the energy was a little bit all over the place. There was a lot of discussion about it. Then it had to introduce itself at the getting to know you session. You know, we sat in a circle and began. Some just gave a few sentences, some more in depth. Then there was a chance for those on Zoom to also have this same opportunity. So it was like a great big getting to know you, which was lovely, but two different sets of those that were live and those that were on the screen. As I said, I'd taken my two models, my Beelzebub Sandman and my Beelzebub colour exercise. And the Beelzebub Green Man style, it's like the Green Man that the Sun Man I call him, but he's done in a Green Man style like you find on churches. But instead of foliage coming out of his mouth, I have Beelzebub's face springing out from the sun. And then, of course, there's the standing Beelzebub in the colour exercise. So the first paper was actually Bob Bowes, which was about A.R. Araj, and I thought this was just apt because A.R. Araj came from Leeds. His archive is in Leeds. I was hoping to perhaps pop in and see the archive, but I didn't get it together in time. You have to book, and you must know what it is you want to see of the A.R. archive, but I shall head back to Leeds one day and have a look around there. But Bob Bowes' talk was really interesting, all about the ether electricity, and he, like me when I had mine, did not have enough time to read his whole paper, and I could have sat and listened to it all afternoon. He was discussing how man should be living for a bit longer. We should be having longer life life scales, and how we waste energy and shorten our lives through wasting energy. And like I say, he never got to finish his paper, but the Q&A, there was lots of questions and statements, which is always good. It always gets a conversation going. And I would say that about this conference. Every paper afterwards had stimulating conversation going to it. Actually, that evening after the conference, I went with a good friend up to St Anne's Cathedral for the Mass, which was a very moving Mass. The priest there was telling us all about his encounter with Pope Francis, who had recently died, and the funeral was the weekend before the conference. I met quite a few people, and a few people who have reached out to me before. Obviously, when people can contact me through the YouTube channel or email me, I've not actually met them in person, so I don't always know what they look like. But it was great to meet up with some of you. Always good to connect in person. I'm a bit rubbish with emails and reading off the screen. I don't always seem to remember anything that I read from a screen, but I can remember an in-person conversation and an encounter. And I also finally met Michael in person. I'm sure he won't mind me name dropping. I watch his YouTube channel lots at Gurdjieff on YouTube. I do like his videos. I highly recommend them. It was great to connect with him and have a good discussion, and seeing him interacting with everybody else was marvellous, of bringing a lot of debate and discussion to what is the Gurdjieff work and the understanding of Beelzebub's tales and trying to fathom the gist. After the Mass at the Catholic Church, my friend and I rejoined other people from the conference, other good friends, and we all went out for a meal where we continued our conversations about what we had felt of that day, what we had learnt, what we wanted to pass on. And how did I feel at the end of that day? One, I was definitely wired by having drank too much mocha. I'd had my intellectual centre tested with all the questions. My emotional centre was a little disturbed as I tried to say the right thing and sometimes forgot myself. You know what it's like in social situations. But it was good to laugh, and we did a lot of laughing in our discussions. So day 2 started off well, but my main issue for that day was I got a headache in the afternoon that took me out of play. The hotel had put the aircon on, and my head froze and was blown on from all other directions, and I found out later I wasn't the only one to suffer from all this. Quite funnily, as someone else commented, many of us were sat there. So we've got to remember, this is the last week of April 2025. There was a heat wave happening in the UK, but many of us were sat there in hats, wearing body warmers and jumpers, whilst outside everybody was in the glorious sun that was in the mid-20s. Yeah, the heat was in the mid-20s, and we were freezing in this aircon room. And then I found out apparently I've been missing out on the free breakfast for all attendees. Each conference is different because it's run by different people at different places every year. So each conference is quite individual, unique, has its own style, you know, different things for different places. Like, for example, I've never known us all to get breakfast, but this was a lovely bonus. Some conferences provide lunch, some don't. It depends, like I say, on where it is. But this conference started for its first full day with Russell Schreiber and quite a personal talk, reminding us of what conscience is. And I found it quite interesting that there was quite a few people being fidgety and getting up and down, but as some of us later commented, they just don't know how to sit yet. Many of us have been coming to these conferences for ages, so we kind of, I'm not saying we follow a format. Well, actually, no, I don't want to be. It's easier once you've been in the work for a while to know how to be still. And like I was saying, the energy was was very energetic because of all the different people and the vibrations going on. It did definitely make people a bit fidgety, but they settled down over the course of the next few days. So we had seminars between talks, and I thought these were quite ordered. The facilitator kept it all very well under control. Control, that's the wrong word. Kept it, well, I've sometimes found at other conferences, seminars can get a bit fractious and can cause a few arguments. But in this, and I would say it was for nearly everyone. I think there was only one where it might have got a little bit, it could have gone wrong, but it didn't. People waited for others to speak. They let people speak. People were listening to each other at these seminars. And like I said, I don't ever recall that ever happening before, but maybe my memories of past seminars are egos and dominant voices sometimes raised. In the afternoon, my good friend Dragon spoke, giving a wonderful paper about the uh, all the different ways of what different words can mean in different languages in the different translations of Beelzebub's tales. But it was here that my headache hit me. And so I must admit I found it quite hard to follow. But thankfully, I've known Dragon for a while, so I've been discussing with him his paper in the build-up, or the run-up rather, to the conference. And it was actually in the following seminar I could feel my body reacting to the headache, and I had to leave. I don't often get ill, so it kind of took me by surprise, and it was annoying because I'd wanted to stay for the evening event. And then I got back to my hotel, and obviously, as I was saying, I was on the other side of town. And I lay there for a while thinking, look, it's still sunny out. Sun's not going to set for ages. I've got a thumping headache. Everybody's having fun. And I was like, I can't sit here feeling sorry for myself. I know I remember watching Venus rise and looking at Venus through the window, twinkling away at me. And then I woke up the next morning. And I must admit, I've not had that long a sleep for a long time, but my headache did kind of lift, though it was still hovering for a couple of days. Was it a mixture of, I would like to blame it on the aircon, obviously, I don't trust aircon, but maybe also just the whole vibrations on getting ready for coming to a conference. Obviously, I was speaking at it as well, maybe subconsciously. I'd like to think that I wasn't concerned about giving a paper. I was quite looking forward to doing it, but who knows what our subconscious is doing? Well, we should know, because that's the whole part of doing the Gurdjieff work. I do remember from that Wednesday, the Thursday, the first full day in the afternoon, even though my head was banging, I remember various comments and discussions about conscience and consciousness being discussed. I myself see them as quite different from some of other people's points of view, and I was reminded that in France, conscience and consciousness are the same word, which I'm still getting my head around. I just don't agree that conscience and consciousness are the same thing. I agree there are various stages of consciousness, but I think there is only one conscience. I sometimes come out of seminars more confused than when I went in, which makes me wonder how many of us do actually do the work in the way it's supposed to be. But I always come out with more questions, more pondering on what it was that Gurdjieff actually wrote, and also being pointed out, because doing these groups you suddenly realise maybe I didn't read that sentence properly, or suddenly you see how that sentence was constructed is actually saying something different to what I thought it meant. That sounds like Wiseacre, but I challenge you to go and read some paragraph in Beelzebub's Tales. We were actually doing for the seminar the terror of the situation, which maybe I'll record that again. Take a paragraph from there and see if you really do understand it in first reading. Now, one thing I've been thinking about throughout the conference is me. Why do I not always have the patience to sit through seminars? Why do I come with judgments? Why do I not start afresh anew each time I'm at a seminar? And sometimes I'd have to tell myself this and say, start afresh. Do not remember how other conferences have been or other seminars, but come here with kind of like a clean slate. It was a bit like I had a stiff board inside of myself ready to take the punches or to deflect the shots that I thought were going to come. These are past incidences, past remembrances holding me back from going forward. And there is a part of me that wants to be bad and wants to push buttons, tread on corns as if I'm some smart aleck who knows best. But actually, that's it. An eye that is being hurt and is trying to protect itself. Deep down, I know that we all want and should be living in loving harmony. I want to be loving and harmonious with one and all, but there is something in me that gets pissed off by people and also wants to piss people off, which is not a good aim. That's the I in me that wants to be noticed by chaos. My aim is to be noticed by being loving and meaning it. I know the right way. I know I need to do it. Why do I need to have others' attention? I should be concentrating on my own attention and where I direct it. One of the attendees actually said in the seminar, how do I go from unconscious judgment to compassion? And that's what set that fault feeling, that fault rolling that I've just said about. We're also reminded by another attendee that Gurdjieff said he gave us leather, and it depends on what type of shoes we make with it. A lot of the time at this and other conferences, I do not understand what people are saying in some discussions. Are they making it more complicated, or do they actually understand the work in a way that I am too stupid for? I believe, and I am thankful for, that I can see every attendee had read the Taos at this conference, and most of them came with their own copy of the book. This is probably the first time I've witnessed that. There's usually a handful, previous conferences I'm talking about, there's usually a handful who have never read Beelzebub's Tales, All and Everything. They know of it, but have not dived into it, and I hope that the conference they attended encouraged them to take it on. You know, in the seminars, we're here to read, discuss, study All and Everything. And this is something I'd wanted to do in London. It came up in the discussions about one of my own ideas. I'd put a call out to people to come and read only, Beelzebub's Tales, All and Everything. Only one person signed up, and that person was from abroad, so that wasn't feasible. And they were saying, let's do it over Zoom. But I really wanted to get a group together in person, and that's for many questions and many reasons why I wanted to do that. I was at first surprised to see that this conference was a hybrid. You know, the whole question of vibrations and interaction, do we get that over Zoom? That's why I wanted to do a reading group in London, so that we are connecting. But am I being old-fashioned? Maybe the technology is the future. And then, of course, there's the whole, what is the future of the conference? Will it have to go online to survive? And that makes it even more important to me to get a reading group going in London. But many folks do struggle with reading All and Everything and just want to be told what the book has to give. If I threw a series of lectures about All and Everything, I think people would come. People want to be given all things on a plate and have everything explained in a few sentences, which is impossible. Which is why this conference is important. Which is why the book All and Everything is important. To get a better understanding with why we have to put the effort in. I was questioned as to why I have not been successful in getting a reading group together in London, and I tried to explain that I just don't know why people don't want to come to that, and that I've wanted to do that for a long time. But I'm also wondering, maybe I need to re-record Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson in some kind of audio version, and I'd like to have it on a recurring radio FM channel, but I don't actually know how to do it. So if anyone knows how to set up a FM radio channel, please get in touch and let me know. And then another thought came to me, wouldn't it be great to sing it? I have a CD of the Bhagavad Gita, that's the whole story, but it's sung. Maybe I need to do that for Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, but who wants to hear me singing? I was also reminded of something that one of the attendees said. They said, everything is affected by what flows in from outside. And I had to ask them, I said, is it affected or effected? And later I started thinking it could be both. The next paper was by Ben Young. It was the difference between philosophies and the Gurdjieff system, and the puzzles and paradoxes that it brings. Philosophy is obviously a puzzle and a paradox way of looking at things, whereas the Gurdjieff system, I agree with the speaker, Ben, on this, is a transformation system. But this talk led me to remembering some conversations I've had with people in the past. I don't think the Gurdjieff work should be put into academia. I'm quite against Gurdjieff and his writings being analysed by academia, because to me Gurdjieff is not just an intellectual process, and putting it into an academic setting would be looking at it from a one-centre point of view, which would be lopsided, unwholesome and unholy. I don't need an academic to explain to me what the Gurdjieff work is, but alas, many rely on academia to tell them what they need to know, because academia is regarded as the place as to where knowledge is held. Ben reminded us that when Gurdjieff was asked what happened to the rest of the members of the Seekers of Truth, the group that he travelled with, he replied that some died and some went into seclusion. Seclusion. I'd quite like that. And I'm trying to prepare myself for that time when I do die. This was one of the quotes given out at the conference, and this is by Irina Hands, one of the translators of All and Everything. And she was saying, only awakening and what leads to awakening has a value in reality. So that got me pondering on reality for the rest of the day or the night. On the last day, it was TJ Clark's talk, which was fabulous, all about science and the scientists of new formation, what Gurdjieff predicted and foresaw and wrote in his tales. We were discussing all these abnormal conditions of life on Earth, which Gurdjieff foresaw coming. And how do we stop people being suggestible? Because that seems to be what the problem was. Everybody's very suggestible. They're hypnotised by the mainstream, being told what to eat, crap food, use certain products that, hurt you. When I walk through a high street, I can feel the shops screaming at me, come in and buy something. This is all subliminal messaging. What is the quality of the food that you are eating? What is the quality of the food that you are putting into your mouth and that your stomach is struggling to digest? How much plastic do you have around you? At a touch of a button, we get the information for the latest fad. In fact, now you can get everything sent as a notification of the latest news, what you need to know, what you need to wear, etc. Everyone's being told what to think. And us on the Gurdjieff work should not be being affected by this. Why can't folk think for themselves? Because they are sheep. That's why they need to be told by notifications of what they need to eat, drink, wear, be told what to believe in, etc., etc., etc. And in the Q&A of this talk given by TJ Clark, we started talking about inorganic shame and how the chapter of America is relevant today. And that is a long old chapter, but I dare you to take a couple of hours to sit down and read it to yourself and give me your impressions. Obviously, there's a lot of wrong education going on, and the Gurdjieff work breaks our learned mentation and rewires us to see reality for what it is and what we can do with ourselves so as not to be caught up in the lunatic asylum, to navigate it and hopefully lighten the load of his endlessness. And we should be here to help others change their consciousness, help them find why they have a lack of attention for the better, help people to make attention, to make a quality of their attention. The last speaker was myself, and should you want to know what my paper was, I highly recommend the 2025 proceedings when they come out. They'll be printed, I'm sure, by the end of the year, which you can purchase, and you'll have all the papers and talks will be published in the proceedings of the All and Everything 2025 conference. I forgot to use my PowerPoint because I'm an idiot. I also never got to read all of it. I don't know whether I spoke slow or time just sped up, because when I practice it at home, I managed to get it all in the time. But in the future, far future, maybe I'll make a video version. Did I wiseacre? Probably. I'm probably wiseacring now. Was there wiseacring throughout the conference? Well, there was a lot of good discussion, and all the papers gave food for thought, and I got something from every paper. For me, attending a conference in person is good for meeting others, seeking to fathom the gist and to help me further my studies. On my last morning at the hotel, I actually got locked in my room. The the door handle was not working, and I had to ring reception where they kept telling me just to push the handle down, and I felt like screaming at them, I know how to open a fucking door. I was on the 7th floor, so I could not jump out of the window. Somebody finally came up, and I could hear him fiddling outside the door with the handle, trying to tap in with one of those key cards. He went off to get a master key whilst I pondered about being locked in. Would I miss breakfast? Would I miss my train? Would I miss saying goodbye, farewell to the other attendees? I tried to read Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, but could not concentrate at all. I read this situation as an opportunity to ponder on these questions. How do we open the doors to understanding what Gurdjieff has written? I was not angry or that much concerned at my situation of being stuck in my hotel room. It was an odd nullity of feeling, and as I looked out the window over Leeds Minster and heard the bells toll as the clock struck the hour, I wanted a cigarette. And of course I wanted a cigarette because I could not have one in the hotel room. I was locked in, so could not get out to have a cigarette. Desires and non-desires. This was something that came up in one of the seminars when we read the Ashiata Shirmash chapters, the one after the Terror of the Situation. The man at the door finally did figure out that it was the barrel on the lock that had gone awry. When the hotel finally released me from my prison, I still had plenty of time for breakfast, time to get to the Queen's Hotel for farewells, and to catch my train, which ended up being delayed by 17 minutes. Not really surprised at that. So as I was saying, the seminars for reading the tales and discussion of what we read created a lot of questions. What is conscience? I covered this a little bit in my paper, but of course my conclusion is my own subjective view of what Mr. Gurdjieff and Mr. Beelzebub are trying to explain to us in the book. What is the function of conscience? Do we have to engender conscience? Do we have to discover where real conscience is? Is it down in the subconscious maybe, waiting to rise up? My book, Angels and Devils, discusses this theme in a fictionalized way. We also discussed what the actual sorrow of his endlessness is, which I have covered in various videos, and the seminar when this subject came up again created an intriguing conversation as to what sorrow actually is. One of the talks briefly brought up painting sparrows into canaries, obviously not a good thing to do in real life. Cruel to the bird, but in meetings with remarkable men, obviously Gurdjieff did this or talks about doing this to make small bucks. I've been told on a number of occasions that I remind people of small birds. Maybe I am a sparrow who chatters endlessly and I want to transform myself into a canary who sings beautiful songs. Transformation, or perhaps I'm a sparrow who has painted myself yellow and I am actually a fake canary. From these seminars, a lot was discussed about the bad state of humanity. And is it in a bad state because most of humanity have little or no conscience? How can we help people to heed their conscience? I think probably by finding and connecting with our own first. So this was my little tales of my trip to Leeds for the conference of 2025, all and everything. And I look forward to 2026, hoping that it'll be live somewhere that I can afford to get to and be with. And by then, hopefully I've fathomed the gist that little bit more. Thank you for watching, listening. And until next time, peace and out.